All right. Welcome everybody to my presentation. My name is Samuel Shapiro. I am the Associate Program Director and Director of Osteopathic Education at Northside Hospital, Gwinnett in Atlanta, Georgia. And today I will be talking to you all about the application process to specifically internal medicine, because that's what we're here through ACOI. And so this is part of ACOI's student lecture series, and this is the lecture for February. My objectives for you all today are going to go over important ERAS dates and costs. We're going to talk about how to find a residency that fits you, so a place where you really want to go, but also a place in which you are competitive. And then we'll talk about the structure of the application, and I'll give you a few tips along the way. So the most important thing I think that most people want to know are, when do I need to get things in by? And even before then, probably, where is this information going? And so this is called ERAS, or Electronic Residency Application Service. This is the 2026 timeline. So for those of you who are fourth years, these dates actually apply to you. For everybody else, these dates will change slightly. So June 4th is when ERAS opens, the season opens. June through August is when you want to finalize your application material. Not start, but finalize. So your CV, personal statements, letters of recommendation. Hopefully you've already asked for these letters, and at this time you want to just follow up with folks who haven't yet filled those out for you. So the most important dates to remember are going to be September 3rd to 24th. This is when applications must be submitted. You can submit them afterwards, but we review these on September 24th. So within a day or two, we have over 1,000 applications that we need to go through. So if you send yours in a week or two after this, there is a good chance that we may miss it, even if you are a very good applicant. So I highly, highly recommend that you get your applications in this time frame, September 3rd to the 24th. And then October through January interview season, February 2nd to March 4th, that's when you can put your rank order list in. So this is through something called NRMP. That's the National Resident Matching Program. So this is the match. So these are two different organizations, ERAS and the NRMP. Just keep that in mind. March 16th to the 20th, that's the week of match. So on the 16th, you find out whether or not you have matched to a location. And then that Friday, you find out which place you match into. I do want to go over some costs. These may change year to year, so make sure you update that as it gets closer to your time. I do understand there are a number of different people listening to this, whether you're a first year up until fourth year. So programs 1 through 30 that you apply to are going to be $11 each, and then after that, it's going to be $30 a program. You do have to pay for your transcripts for both USMLE and the COMLEX, and so be aware that, again, this is a one-time fee. The NRMP match registration is $70. So under the total estimates cost scenarios, I do have a few different for you. So you just apply for 15 programs. At the end of the day, that'll be around $315, assuming you only send in one transcript, at $80 if you send in both transcripts. Now, if you hit the 50 program amount, which isn't a limit, but that's around $1,000, so it exponentially increases. A few things to, or I guess one thing to help and one thing that may make things more expensive. So AMC offers a fee assistance program that gets you 60% off your first 50 applications. Now, when it comes to the match, if you want to rank more than 20 programs, you actually have to pay an additional $30 per program that you rank after that. So keep those things in mind as you're going through and thinking about your budget. Now, the big question that most people have is, where do I go? There's a lot of places, and how competitive am I? And hopefully I can help you answer that question. I can't answer that question for you, but there are a few applications out there that will lead you down that road. I'm going to talk about the Residency Explorer tool. There are other ones out there like Frida and Texas Star, but Residency Explorer tool is created directly through ERAS. And I'll kind of go over the reasons why I'm recommending this one. So the way they describe it, it helps you compare programs, understand differences between them, and identify those that best align with your goals and needs. It also offers data to help you assess your competitiveness to individual programs, which is the big piece of this that I'll talk about. And so where do they get their information? It's through official organizations, which is why I'm referencing this in my PowerPoint today. So ERAS and NRMP, we've talked about that already. ACGME, which is the governing body of graduate medical education, the residency programs. NBME or OME, those are your boards. I'm sure you guys have all heard about this or will hear about this soon. American Medical Association and AAMC, which is where ERAS comes from. And this is kind of gives you program details and such. So what's in it? It is ultimately a program directory. And so we'll talk a little bit about filters later, but hopefully you're all using the internal medicine filter, and that actually narrows it down to 600 or more programs, which is a lot. And so there's a lot to sift through, and we'll go through, again, competitiveness in places that you might want to go and maybe try to narrow that down a little bit more for you. It also goes through interview rates. So how many DOs have been accepted for interview, how many MDs, and how many international medical graduates. USMLE and the comics are also in here as well. And this is directly from the organizations that run it. And then it gives you program characteristics. I'm not going to go through the specific programs, but you can click into them and they will tell you specifics about those programs. The next step I would recommend, if you've seen there's a place that you are interested in, to then go to their website. So what's the best use for this? It's really to ask the question, am I statistically competitive for this individual program? And I'll go through how to figure that out. What it doesn't take into account is if you do a sub-I or sub-internship, an audition rotation, it doesn't take into account your personal statements or your letters of recommendation and the quality of those. So here is a screenshot of what it looks like once you create an account and start looking through programs. I did not put any filters here, but for the display applicant type, I do have MDs and DOs, and we'll go through each of these sections. So this is just for the last cycle, so 2025 interview cycle. And here it says middle 80% of scores for step 2 for both step 2 and level 2. We also have a few other things here, but let's talk about these numbers. And so the 80%, the way they define it is 80% of applicants invited to interview at the program, their scores fall between these numbers. So let's use Northside. 225 to 257 is the range of people that we interview. So some ask the question of what's the minimum score that we look at. That is sometimes helpful, but this information is direct. These are the applicants from last year. Something I'm going to go into in a good detail are the signals. So this is relatively new, but this is very important because this does help us decide who we're going to interview. So let's get into this a little bit. So you get 15 total signals in internal medicine, 3 gold, 12 silver. Gold you should be using for places that you very much want to go, highest interest. Silver is still high interest. These are places that you very much want to get interviews. And so some people use the reach target safety strategy. So that's going to be a reach school is going to be places where maybe your scores are not as close to the midline, so maybe lower. Your safety scores is going to be higher, and then target's going to be around the midline in terms of board scores. There's more to think about than that, but sometimes that's a simplified version of it. It's important to talk about geographic preference on top of the signals for both gold and silver. So you can choose up to 3 geographic locations. So South Pacific, like New England area, there's a number of different ones that you can choose from. You can also opt to say no preference. If you truly don't have a preference of where you go, say you just want to go to the best place that you can get into, no preference is what you should do. And then you should use the gold and silver signals at the locations you want. So sure, some in California, some in New York, some in Florida, right? That's great. What you don't want to do is use geographic preferences and then use your signals at locations in which your preferences are not placed. So we can see if you have preferenced something. So say you have preferenced every place other than the South Atlantic location, and you apply to my program and you say that we are a silver signal. I can see that you did not prefer to come here geographically. So I have 2 questions. One is, do you Do you not really want to come to our program, or did you misunderstand the assignment of signals? Neither is ideal. It may decrease your likelihood of actually getting an interview. So using these things in combination is going to be the most helpful way to use them. Kind of to drive home the point of how we use signals as residency programs in internal medicine. The interview rate for people who use gold is 30 to 50%. Silver was 10 to 30%. And then those who did not signal, the rate at which they were getting invitations for interview was 0 to 2%, which is significant. And this is true across talking to many PDs in whether academic or community program. So you want to keep this in mind. We very much look at the signals because it does limit the over 1,000 applicants that we're looking through. So let's look at some numbers from specific places. And as you can see, they all kind of line up with what I'm saying, which is the no signal here is 10% is the highest. But most of us are interviewing the folks who are giving us those signals. Something that I don't put as much weight on is the in-state versus out-of-state. I do wish it was a little bit more broad. So I wish it said like region. That would be a little bit more probably accurate to who we accept. So usually when we talk about signals, you can write like why you're signaling. So I like this. I want to come to the Southeast because my family is there. I grew up there, right? So these are things that we take into account. Or even it's like, hey, I think I like the Southeast. I want to come here. I have no real preference. And so we interview people from all over, just getting a general idea of what they're interested in. So very important to osteopathic students is do they or do they not accept us for interview, right? And so the percentages are here and can be helpful. I want to reiterate that this is only last year. So say you find a program that you like, and maybe that the DO applications that were offered or the DO interviews that were offered were 3%. Look back at previous years. Maybe it was higher, maybe it was lower. And that again will either move that needle up or down on your competitiveness for that program. So a few other tips that I want to talk about in relation to the Residency Explorer. So competitive, when I talk about competitive scores, I'm talking about a standard deviation from the mean. So again, if your scores are higher, like much higher, you might think that this is maybe a safety school. If it's much lower, this may be a reach school. But around the standard deviation is probably your target where you're really looking to go. Filters. There are a lot of filters. I'm not going to go through everything. I'm just going to go through the first few that I probably recommend utilizing. So specialty. So if you're interested in fellowship, this is going to be helpful. I want to make a note that you can still get into fellowship without going to a program that has fellowships attached. But as I said, if you are interested in fellowship, that is something you want to look into. Region, I do recommend you think about where you want to go because that'll narrow the 600 down to hopefully much less than that. Size of programs. Programs range from 15 total residents over the 3 years to 150 residents over those years. So just keep that in mind of where you want to fall in that. And then there's something called tracks, which I want to just comment on. This is going to be, is there a primary care track? Is there a hospitalist track? Or is there a fellowship track? The other thing is osteopathic recognition, which is technically not a track. And so you can filter out all these things. As you go through residencies, you'll get a better idea of what you might be interested in. Make sure you review the program's websites. Those are going to be the most up-to-date pieces of information for you. So utilizing this to see your competitiveness, which programs you might want to apply to, and then go to their websites and look into them a little bit more. So just general tips on kind of making your list. So as I mentioned, the reach target safety strategy. So in terms of like the percentages of programs that you would apply to, so reach should be about 15%, target should be in the 70%, and then your safety schools are going to be again in the 15%. And that'll kind of give you your best bets for applying to a reasonable number of places and actually getting interviews and getting accepted. Making a spreadsheet, make sure you think about the things that are important to you, and that'll help you create what you need to find the residency that fits best. And then I highly, highly recommend doing sub-Is or audition rotations, whatever your school may call these. And so this is through something called VSLO. These help you a lot. So those reach schools that maybe your scores don't match up very well in, if you blow those auditions out of the water, it increases your likelihood of getting a spot. And same with those target schools. So if you do really well in these, We do like accepting people who have come and done sub-Is. Doesn't mean you have to have one, but it can be very helpful. So let's talk now about the different sections of your application. So ERAS is broken down into all of these different sections, and we'll go through each of them. I'll kind of explain what is expected and some of my tips on these. So publication. So this is your scholarly activity. This is going to be your case report. This is going to be your poster presentation, literature reviews, those type of things. They don't need to be published already. It can be kind of in any point in the process, and it just gives us an idea of what you're doing. Now, I know a lot of people don't necessarily have these type of things in their resume. So if you've done local presentations for rotations, those can also be helpful things to add because this does show that you're very active in your education. Hobbies and interests, pretty straightforward. I would recommend that you put things that you actually do. We do ask questions about this to get an idea of how well-rounded you are, things you do outside of medicine. So be prepared to talk about the things that you put in. Experiences are the bulk of what this application is. So this is where most of your CV is going to go into. So ERAS limits the number that you can place. So you can only put 10 experiences in. They give you the opportunity to pick 3 meaningful places. And so what I mean is it basically just gives you an additional area where you can write down 30 extra characters to describe why this makes you a good candidate for internal medicine. So for those of you who have more than 20 experiences, you're going to have to find the ones that paint the picture of why you'd be a good internal medicine candidate. And on the opposite spectrum, those who maybe only have 3 or 4, it is perfectly fine that you only have that many. Make sure that these are things that you can talk about. I would advise against just fluffing it up to where you fill all 10 just to fill them. That makes more work for us. We can tell when it's just fluff. Like one thing specifically that I would say not to do, don't put your rotations in there. So don't tell me that you had an internal medicine residency rotation and you learned about internal medicine. I am very aware that everybody has had an internal medicine residency because it is required by all schools. So if you have an experience that you can talk about that is meaningful to you, definitely put them in there, but make sure that it's something you talk on. Program signals, geographic preferences, we've already spoke about. Photos, make sure that they're professional. So what I mean by that is wear professional attire, make sure that your background is neutral. And I like that this faceless woman here is in the appropriate distance from the camera. So think about that as you're getting your pictures done. Medical school transcript in the MSPE or Dean's letters, how some people describe this. These things are given to us directly from the school, so you don't have to worry about getting them to us. This tells us your grades, how you did on rotations, if you had any failures or extensions, interruptions, those type of things. The board scores, you may need to make sure you get your transcript, as I said before. Letters of recommendation. So for internal medicine, you get 3 letters of recommendation. I recommend that you get 2 clinical. The third one can also be clinical, but for those of you who are doing more academic programs that you're applying to, it's probably a good idea to get someone who's involved with your research into that. In terms of what to do about letters, how to get them, I highly recommend you ask your attendings in advance. So on day 1 of the rotation, say, hey, I'm very interested in doing what you do. Would you be able to write me a letter at the end of this rotation? For me, that tells me that okay, this is something you want to do. I can pay a little bit more attention, write down some specifics, take notes on you throughout the month. That way I can write a much more robust letter of recommendation. And make sure that you follow up with these folks. We are all very busy clinicians, so please, when it gets closer to application time, reach back out to us if we have not yet done your letters of recommendation to give us some reminders. Personal statements. So this is why you're a good candidate. This is what made you interested in internal medicine. You can make these specific to the programs that you apply to, right? So if you apply to 15 programs, you could do 15 different personal statements. So it is nice when I read one and it says, I can't wait to be a resident at Northside Hospital where I can work under the magnificent Dr. Shapiro. Great. Don't send a personal statement that says, I can't wait to work at Northside Hospital under the great Dr. Shapiro to Emory. Do not do that. Be very certain that you that you have sent this to the right location before you hit enter. I have read a few that say the wrong thing, and that does stand out in our mind, and not in a good way. So just a few last tips before I finish up. So for extensions, interruptions, and failures, there's now a section that you can justify these. When I say justification, it's okay that these happen. A lot of us will take into account what happened, how you handled it, and what you learned from it. These are the things that help us decide, all right, well, you've understood, what happened. Sometimes they're mistakes, sometimes it's, tragedies and things like that occur. Please make sure that you describe them. We actually get this information from your school. So the worst thing that you can do is sweep this stuff under the rug. And we do usually ask questions about this on the interview, so be prepared to talk about it. This seems straightforward, but please do not forget to actually submit your application. There's plenty of times where students will say, oh, it's weird how I haven't had any interviews. It's been like a week and a half. Go back and make sure that it's actually sent, because the interviews do go out very quickly once you submit your application. Or I should say, once we start looking at them this year. That date is September 24th again. Know that every residency looks at applications a little bit differently. This is kind of the benefit of the Residency Explorer tool, because you can kind of see how each program thinks about their applicant pool. And so I'm giving you guys a lot of generalizations. As you all know, this is a recorded video and I don't know you directly. So when you are going through, make sure you're talking to your peers. Make sure you're asking about your advisor. Hey, this is what my CV looks like. This is what I've done. This is where I want to go. What are my chances? This is what I'm thinking. Talking to someone will help you with some of that insight. Probably one of the biggest things that I want you to get out of this is the importance of signals. To give you another kind of thought about it, it helps us in our initial interview offer, but it is not the final thing that we use in terms of giving you a spot. And so be pertinent on how you're using this. So one thing I would say not to do, say you have multiple failures and no research. Just because you put a gold signal for Johns Hopkins does not mean that they will interview you. So just keep that in mind when you're utilizing these signals. As I mentioned, using your resources like your colleagues. This next slide is actually a good bit of resources. So I want you guys to use my presentation as a stepping stone. Hopefully I answered a bunch of questions. Hopefully I've given you a lot more questions that need answering. And so these next places that I'm going to go over are going to be where you should go to next. So ERAS or AAMC has a website that goes through all of this information in much more detail. I highly recommend their webinars. So these are updated every year. And to give you an idea, they do have them per specialty. So if you're interested in internal medicine, they have one for internal medicine and how to think about the application. And they have other people like myself giving a similar talk and their opinions from their programs, which are very similar to what I'm saying now. If you want to know more about the match and how that works and the algorithm works, NRMP has a good short video on the algorithm and how to think about it. And then if you want to get your feet wet on kind of what to do when the actual application opens up, ERAS does have a sample for you to look at. So with all that being said, hopefully this has been helpful and pointed you in the right direction moving forward. What I'll say is good luck on application season. If you have any questions or any concerns, my name again is Sam Shapiro. This is my email, samuelshapiro@northside.com. And Jeremy McFarland, he is student and resident program associate. Here is his email as well. Finally, ACOI does have a free sign up for students, and you can scan the QR code here, which also has many resources, including this video. And with that, I will leave you. Take care, and hopefully I see you on the interview trail at some point.